I think clearly the wealth of experience of Northeastern graduates certainly creates a tremendous opportunity, and is currently untapped for mentoring. And I think our different experiences and backgrounds, and by our I mean many of you as well, can shape the type of mentoring that can be provided for either students or for alumni. Certainly, I can see from my perspective, and I've had discussions along these lines with students following last year's, with graduate students following last year's program, mentoring around careers, structuring transition from between graduate school and going into the first job. What should that be? Should it be academia? Should it be industry? If so, what kind of industry and why? These are not a one-size-fits-all type of answers because of the individual, their drive, their willingness to do certain things. So I can definitely see value at this interface between school and subsequent work. The first role, the first job is so impactful on all of us. I certainly remember mine too. It had a huge impact on what I've done the rest of my career. But also this allows the students, by getting this type of mentoring early enough, to really maximize their opportunities for networking while they're still in school. And it's not just the what, it's the how. It's building that sophistication about how to do it, not just doing it. So I would say that's a clear opportunity for the mentoring program. Another one would be for people who are at the intersection of decision making in their careers, like I have been, like Carl, like many of you are. Some of you I've talked to over the last year or two about making changes in your careers. I made changes. I think that that's an opportunity, again, for the mentoring program, because many of us have gone through this and expanding the network. And then once in a company, let's say in a biotech situation, since that's the situation I relate to best, we could certainly provide input on, in terms of perhaps strategic decisions, management challenges, structuring the company, how virtual should you go versus how much you should build, the things that really decisions that face people in their first role in a company. Like Carl said. So I see, again, this just reflects my experience. There are many more facets that the other speakers can allude to.
I found that when I've reached out for mentors, everyone is happy to offer advice, but oftentimes it's been my experience that people sort of say, well, here's what happened to me, and but that isn't always going to be the thing that works for the individual that's seeking the advice because of backgrounds and emotional status and those sorts of things. So when I think of a mentoring program, I think it's important that the way that something like this be structured, there has to be an analysis phase to really sort of direction that they're open to. And then I think a team can be constructed around that. So that's the first thing. So really sort of breaking it down to fundamentals versus simply offering free advice. It's something that has to be regular. And so something along the lines of monthly, almost like advisory boards are typically set up. So keeping a rhythm going for an individual, a mentee, is critical because you all know that given the pace with which, with the space that we're all working within, things change on a daily, hourly basis. You have to be ready. And I think that oftentimes mentees will not be equipped in the early stages of following a change for them to be able to react appropriately. So having that group of mentors, that structure around them, sort of safety net, if you will, I think that's an approach that I'm interested in taking with regular frequency, monthly, roughly something like that. And it's got to be, people have to be local and available. As I have looked to build a scientific advisory board and sort of expand our own board of directors, it's easy for somebody to bring in a name, but if that name is not accessible, it's not going to be any good. So mentors have to be accessible.
When we were starting to leave our positions and develop a new company, we had a number of people that we talked to initially because we were going into something that was a bit unique, which is the physician equity ownership model. We talked confidentially with some physicians that we've known over the years and kind of vetted out the idea with them, and they were very helpful, as both Christina and Carl mentioned. There's a lot of free advice out there, and I was also impressed how willing people are to give you some time and be a sounding board. So that was very comfortable. It made us feel very comfortable that these folks were encouraging us, that the model made a lot of good sense. And then to try to put together the plan, we had to do some financial modeling, which we were trying to do this off hours without, and do this the right way. We had responsibilities and we respected confidentiality of our current job, but we did this stuff off hours. So one of the founding partners, a brother-in-law, knew someone that could do financial models for us, so we had someone do some financial models for us. Then there were some regulatory, legal kind of issues because the physician ownership model hadn't really been tested. There's a lot of stock laws involved with this kind of ownership type thing, so we had to vet that out. And we talked to a couple of different legal sources that we knew, and we got comfortable with that piece of the equation. And then we decided we wanted to go further, and we really didn't know where to go from there. We had never raised money. The organization we came out of was a multi-billion-dollar revenue situation. We had a treasury department. We never really had to worry about sourcing money. And that was kind of interesting because we didn't know how to go about it. We talked to a couple of different business startup kind of lawyers. There's a number of them here on the 128 belt. There's a lot more resources in that area now than there were back in '99 when we put our company together. And we went with one of the legal startup guys that we had talked with. And that person was very helpful for us from a standpoint of how to organize the company, but then took us to the next step and introduced us to some venture capital type people. As I mentioned earlier, we talked to 3 VCs. One was one that we knew very well from our careers that was willing to back us to 100% of the money that we were looking for, but we didn't like the deal. The deal was not really good for us. And we were suggested that maybe what you ought to do is, go to a lower level, get some mezzanine type people. They'll give you a little more flexibility. And we went with the third one we talked to because they were very supportive of the concept. And something interesting we found that venture capitalists like good ideas. They like them even better when there's a management team around that. So you got to bear that in mind. I mean, if you have a terrific idea, that's great, but if you can't execute, you're not going anywhere. So we were very fortunate to meet a group out of Stamford, Connecticut, which had had a little bit of exposure to our industry, who got comfortable with what we were doing, and crafted a very customized kind of plan that was incentive-based, and as I mentioned earlier, was milestone-based. We had to get so many things done in a certain period of time. We had never been faced with running out of money and meeting the payroll, so we were very fortunate to get some good advice and get some good introductions, and that was very helpful. The other thing I just mentioned, both Carl and Christina mentioned, that there's a lot of free advice out there. I have people seek me out these days, not always Northeastern folks, but I'm very willing to do this. And I think mentors, I really look forward to helping people do this. But I've had people who used to work for me when I started up other companies, and one in particular I'm thinking of, he started a company and came to me and said, look, I got my business plan, will you take a look at it? And I went through it with him in great detail with him, made some suggestions, and he's very successful now. And he always comes back to me and thanks me greatly for taking the time to give him a little bit of help when he was trying to get off the ground. So it's nice to be able to give back something like that to somebody. And I was fortunate enough that some people helped us do that too. And I think that's a great thing about America, and I think about even the Northeastern program. We hope we can give back to people that are thinking of doing this.